Hello and welcome to another tutorial of Linux shell scripting. So in this video I will be covering about Linux. So we will discuss what is Linux, what is shell, and how shell interacts with the Linux kernel, and what is the Linux distributions, what are the different tabs of the Linux distribution. So without any further delay, let's get started. Linux. So what do you think? What is Linux? Do you think it's an operating system? So the answer is no. Linux is basically a kernel. So the kernel is the one which is act as a heart of Linux. The main function of the Linux kernel is to interactions with the hardware, right? So the major roles and responsibility for Linux kernel is it is it basically it manages your file management, or we can say it does file management, it does multitasking, memory management, IO management, process management, device management, networking support, and virtual memory handling. So these are the primary responsibility of Linux kernel. So let's say when you open a file, so it generates an IO request, so which is handled by Linux kernel. If you open a if you create a process, so execution, termination of that process will be handled by your Linux kernel. If you add a device or remove any device, so that will be handled by your Linux kernel. If you access any website, so this is a networking scenario, so that networking things will be handled by your Linux kernel. Okay, so this is a high level diagram. So here, as you can see, that here we have an application which interacts with Linux kernel, and kernel interacts with the various kinds of devices. So in this way there is a communications going on between kernel and kernel application kernel and the hardware. So the main features of the Linux kernels are it is portable. So Linux is can be ported into the multiple devices, whether it is your Android application, whether it is a hardware, or whether it is your server, whether it is a supercomputer, whether it is or my desktop machine. And all these machines, Linux can be easily ported. So this is one of the major feature of Linux. Another is secure. Linux is much secure as compared to Windows. We have seen that there are the multiple attacks happened on the Windows, but on the other hand there are less number of attacks on Linux. Why? Because of the tight security feature provided by the Linux. So there are firewalls, there are SE-Linux which handles the security of Linux. So another thing is open source. Linux is totally free. You can easily download the code of Linux. If you want to customize the Linux code, then you can easily customize it. Another feature is a structured file system. In Linux, all the files are structured. There is a root directory. In the root there are the subdirectory. In subdirectory there is another directory layer. So all the files are structured in a tree data structure, and everything is a file in Linux, whether it is a device or something else, whether it is a directory, whether it is a file. So all are treated as file in Linux. So easy to customize. Why we can easily customize Linux? Because it's open source. Since it is an open source, if we know how to customize this, then it can be easily customized. But on the other hand, if you want to customize the Windows, then you cannot. Why? Because the code of Windows is not open source. It is highly secure under the treasure of Microsoft. So that's about Linux feature. The question is, who created Linux? So Linux created by Linus Torvalds. He also created Git, and he is the gentleman. So what is Linux distribution? So as we know that Linux is not a complete operating system. It is just a kernel. So I cannot do all my things just using a kernel. I need some top of this. So which can be easily provided, which are provided by the Linux distribution. So we can say that Linux distribution is combination of kernels and other packages, which creates a complete packages and which allow us a seamless operation for the end user. So almost around 600 Linux distributions are there. So coming to the next one, so we can say that Linux distribution is basically your kernel, your GNU tool, your package manager, which manages your packages. So it adds, if you want to add a package or remove an application, which can be easily performed with the help of package manager. There is a window manager, desktop manager. All right, so here are the most of the picture of most of the Linux distribution operating system. So Red Hat, Ubuntu, Mint, Debian, Fedora, CentOS, SUSE, Kali Linux. There are the multiple numbers of the Linux distributions are there, even though I don't know most of the Linux distribution. Okay, so another topic is, what is shell? So as you know that there is a Linux kernel, and to communicate with the Linux kernel we need some interface. So that interface is your shell. So shell allow us for the accessing your operating system services. So the shell can be either CLI or GUI based. If you open a terminal in CLI based, so this is a CLI based shell. If you directly access the GUI, so that shell will be in your GUI based. So on most Linux operating system there is a shell program which is bash. So it is act as your default shell program. So other than bash, other shell program like KSH, TCSH and GSS can be installed on your shell program. So we will talk about more in shell program in the later videos. Okay, so here is the structure of shell, how it interacts with the kernel. So here whenever you have user request, it goes to your shell. Now shell communicates to your kernel, then kernel contacts to the hardware, or we can say kernel communicates with the hardware process the required the request which is sent, and after that it return back to kernel, then kernel send it to the shell, then shell send it to the user. So in this way communications happens between a user to shell, shell to kernel, kernel to hardware. So here is the high level diagram. So here we have user talks to shell, shell talks to application, then application talks to low level utilities, then low level utilities contacts to kernel, then kernel talks to hardware. So in this way communications happens in your Linux distribution. So now coming to the point, the next point is terminal. Terminal is basically a program which opens a windows and allows us to interact with the shell. So basically when open a windows to interact with the shell. So this is known as a terminal. Let's say if I do SSH for XYZ machine, so what I am doing, I am actually creating a terminal. So terminal can be, so these are all about shell, terminal, Linux, and Linux distribution. So that's all about in this video. So thanks for watching, have a nice day, and if you have liked this video, please hit the like button and please don't forget to subscribe my channel. So thanks for watching, bye bye.